Hello everyone, this is Antom64.
And I'm Richie.
And welcome to Kana, Bridge of Spirits for the PlayStation 5. This is a particularly apt game to kick off 2022 with, alongside Super Mario 3D World, obviously, because it's a game all about death and the inevitable rebirth of things. So let's go ahead and start a new game. Yes, that's cool. We're going to be playing on story mode, where your rot abilities recharge passively, and the enemies are less aggressive and deal less damage. You'd think normal mode would be fine. No, I actually had to restart after playing for about an hour, but that was then, and this is now, so...
Yes, one of the things that I think gets brought up quite a lot is that, spirit mode, surprisingly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just in this for the story and the experience, just go for that mode. Ignore spirit mode unless you want a challenge.
Unique one masks are carved to honor the dead, placed in sacred shrines. These masks gradually return to dust, symbolizing the spirit's peaceful journey into the next life. Not all spirits can travel this path alone. Struggling with tragedies of their past, the text fades out before you can finish talking. I hope you read it all.
I mean, to be fair, that's probably my fault more than anything else, but either way, look at this beautiful animation!
Indeed. Like, the thing that caught my eye before we even had the game in our hands at all was just how beautiful and fluid the animation of the game is. This was done by a team of 15 people by the name of Ember Lab, and this is their very first game. I think they hadn't done anything else other than animation work before.
Yeah, so basically, Ember Lab was founded by brothers Mike and Josh Greer. So Mike Greer is the director for the game, Josh Greer is the producer. They spent 5 years creating commercials and branded applications, and then they shifted to creating an original video game after 2016. They partnered with Sony Interactive Entertainment for a console-exclusive deal and grew the team to 15 core employees. Okay, so there might have been slightly more work in it, but 15 core employees. And then worked in collaboration with a few other studios, including Vietnamese animation studio Sparks, and the original score was composed by Jason Gallaty, who collaborated with Balinese ensemble group Gamelan Kudamani to create the sort of style of music in this, which is respectful to that culture.
Why have you come?
I sense suffering here, Spirit. Do you need help?
Interesting thing to point out is that while these cutscenes are stunning, they do play at 24 frames per second.
Ooh.
Whereas the rest of the game plays at like 30 or 60. I can't quite remember the specifics.
Well, we're playing the PS5 version here, so 60 I would imagine.
I would hope so. So yes, gameplay, real-time cutscenes, full frames per second, specific cutscenes, 24 frames per second, and it looks weird. But that's what happens when you make artistic choices like that.
Yeah, you know how artists be, guys, especially when it comes to creating games and whatnot. Just look at David Cage, haha! Booyah. So combat, you got your light attack, you got your heavy attack, you got your dodges and whatnot. You also have a parry, which, I'm going to be honest, I never really got around to using, so don't expect me to be some Dark Souls kind of guy going forward.
Yeah, the parry is incredibly useful and something that, if you can master it, is going to just be a godsend for doing well at the combat in this game. But it is very tricky to get the timing down on it.
There we go. The pulse is going to be your bread and butter going forward. This is essentially how Kana can use her spirit powers to help heal things. Be honest with me, Rich, how many times when thinking about the name of this game did you default to The Legend of Korra?
Never, because I have never watched The Legend of Korra or Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Ooh, pretty. For me, it was like every other time. I kept thinking it was called, like, The Legend of Kana.
I mean, that would have been a great name for it, The Legend of Kana, Bridge of Spirits. Oof.
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good.
Beautiful.
Ooh. Spirit children, the most elusive of spirits. Don't think I've seen many games where a triangle isn't interact in some form. KH2 love that shit.
Oh yeah. I feel like, in some ways, Kingdom Hearts 2 was the beginning of the triangle button being sort of a primary interact button. But that might just be the fact that that's so heavily ingrained in my memory now that is the key interact button, that everything else has been washed out.
Oh, it's adorable.
It is so cute.
Do they sell, like, plushes of the Rot and whatnot?
I don't think they do yet. They definitely bloomin' should, because they are the cutest little things, and people would definitely buy them.
Kana's got a bit of clout behind it now, because it did win the Best Indie Game Award at the 2021 VGAs.
Oh yeah, well, it won Best Independent Game and Best Debut Indie Game, so 2 awards at the Game Awards. And also, it has been nominated for Best Character Animation in a Video Game at the Annie Awards, where it is up against Disney Wonderful Worlds, It Takes Two, Madrid Noir, and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart.
Oh, no, I would say its 2 biggest contenders in that category were It Takes Two and Ratchet.
But for such a small team on their first game to get that is amazing.
It is, yeah. And speaking of It Takes Two, I watched KZ Excellent play through the game with a co-op partner, and honestly, it feels like it would be good material for HFC if you wanted to play it with me.
I mean, I would be very interested in doing so. I think it's just obviously the technological challenges.
Thumbnail shot.
Also, I just love the Rot, and basically I think the Rot are part of what sold me on the game to begin with, because it's like, oh my god, it's adorable and it looks so cute. Yes, I want this game in my life.
Of course you got a double jump. You're a spirit guide, why wouldn't you have one?
Well, exactly.
There she is.
Oh, thank you, Spider-Man, my favourite spirit medium. Oh, that's a big one.
Yes, so basically all the rest of the Rot are actually a lot bigger than our initial Rot. And they'll be the ones that will be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. They'll be doing actual heavy lifting of picking up objects, moving them about. They'll also be used to solve puzzles and also help you out in combat.
Oh,
so you
bless.
do want to make sure that you try and get as many Rot as possible. There are a total of, I believe, 100 Rot in the game. Some of them are very well hidden.
Yes,
others
they are.
not quite so well hidden. But it's fun getting them all. There are a bunch of other collectibles in there as well, including Rot hats. So little hats for your Rot to wear, which is adorable. And then, yeah, there's a couple of other things as well. But we'll get into that as we go.
This is going to be a very laid-back sort of playthrough, guys, to kind of contrast the utter mania that will be the 3D world playthrough.
Well, of course, you need something to just bring it all back down. Just have a nice breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yes, I can imagine that is going to be absolute mayhem. Because, I mean, we all take the piss out of each other at the best of times. You throw everybody playing together at the same time on top of all of that, and it's just a recipe for carnage.
Uh-huh. We'll get back to those spirits in a second, but first I must have my jiggies, my notes. You know, you'll notice they have different, like, growths and whatnot on them. The one we got kind of had a full head of hair. Keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's like that one's a really important Rot or something.
Yeah.
But yes, I do believe you need to get all 5 before you are able to continue with our quest.
Oh, don't you worry, mate. Thank you, Rot. Very cool. Your team of companions has grown, and you now have 1 Rot action available. You can send them to do stuff.
Which, like, thank God, because I kind of need their power.
Just checking something. Graphics is performance mode. Yeah, there we go. 60 FPS, targeted 4K resolution. Very nice.
The game really is beautiful. For such a small team to have achieved this level of quality in the visual style, I mean, like, the art style is one of the main things that the game got very highly praised for. And rightfully so, because it is gorgeous.
And you may notice throughout the game we praise that before we praise the gameplay. That's not to say the gameplay is like any slouch or anything. It's just, it's your very standard like PS2 era action adventure sort of game, which honestly I'm all for. I love this sort of thing.
Oh yeah. In terms of the general critical response, particular praise was given to artistic direction, original music, and the use of the rots. But there's division when it comes to the gameplay, the narrative, and the characters, which I think is about right for what we see with Kena here. Because, yeah, the gameplay is okay. There's just a slight sluggishness, I suppose, with some of the platforming. The combat mostly reminds me of Enslaved Odyssey to the West, but without some of the flexibility that game's combat offered.
The rot already. That is a sentence you never want to hear. Okay, let's see if we can bind these guys. Or we'll just do this and destroy the thing that is bringing the enemies back.
Generally a pretty good idea.
Thank you, Rot. Very cool. But just look at that.
I know. I think that was the other thing that just made me happy, is just like, oh, it's like Okami.
Yep. Oh, of course you'd love that sort of thing. Jesus.
You just scratch that bringing nature back to life itch, and I will love you forever. That's basically just, I will just go, oh, and get excited.
Ooh. Eat, my children, feast upon the berries.
So one of the things that you can do as you go around the world is you can find berries and other things to make your rot happy, and it will give you something called karma. And karma basically allows you to upgrade your abilities, which you really do want to do. In particular, one of the things that you want to get as soon as possible is the Rot Hammer.
Yes.
Because it is an incredibly powerful attack, which is basically going to solve so many problems for you.
Really? Now, you mentioned Enslaved for the whole comparison with the combat and whatnot. My mind went to Beyond Good and Evil first.
That is fair. I've never played Beyond Good and Evil, so obviously that's why that wouldn't be a link. But having looked at what that combat style is like, yeah, it's that sort of, it's slightly slow, slightly methodical, requires a level of precision, but the game's not necessarily 100% designed perfectly to accommodate the limitations that it sets you. Like, if the combat was more fluid, then you would be better dealing with what sort of you end up facing.
You do not fully understand it.
I love a bad guy in a mask, and there's a big theme of masks throughout the game. Obviously, as you saw in the text crawl at the beginning.
Death and corruption are all that remain here.
This land can be healed, but you cannot stay here, Spirit. You must move on.
You are the one who does not belong.
I'm going to create a boss and kill you with it. I'm evil.
Abandon my people.
I say evil, he seems more pragmatic than anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of technically no true villain in Kena Bridge of Spirits. It's more people are corrupted, or they are doing what they think is right, but actually they may be causing more harm than they should be.
Oh, now we actually have to put a bit of stank on this. There we go. So combat isn't just whack, 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 whack. You do have to take into account sometimes you might need to shield and whatnot.
Yeah, although getting that parry on is, it's a lot more difficult than it has any right to be.
Yeah, it's not happening. We're not having a Devil May Cry 5 a fun here, guys.
I think the problem is that there's not necessarily the visual or audio cues to go, this is the moment where you should activate your parry, which most of the major action titles do tend to do. If you look at Bayonetta, The Wonderful 101, Metal Gear Rising, basically I'm just listing Platinum games.
Well, to be fair, it's not trying to be a pure action game, it's action-adventure.
The little guys can eat it.
That's usually the sort of approach that you want to take with any combat that you're creating, if it's in this sort of third-person action realm, because it gives people much more stuff to go off of to effectively
Don't
battle.
worry about us. We've been here a long time and take care of ourselves.
But your spirits, so you can't really have done that good of a job?
Do you know who that spirit was with the horned mask?
We don't know, but when he shows up, the girl's poison grows stronger.
Poison bad, light good. Remember that and you'll basically get through the game with no problems.
I'm searching for the sacred mountain shrine. Can you take me there?
If you want to get to the mountain shrine, you have to help us with something first.
Okay, tit for tat, I know how this works.
Forest. We need you to help him.
Great idea, Saya. That'll be easy for her. Did you see what she did to that stick guy?
Help us free Taro and we'll take you to the mountain shrine.
Alright, let's go help Taro in the forest. We've got to find him first, though. Hey. You tend to get a lot of rot when you beat like a boss or a mini-boss, I found.
Yes, I think you usually get somewhere between 3 and 5 rot after every kind of big boss encounter. Ah, look! It's the Breath of the Wild shot.
Oh, Jesus. Even Sonic's doing it now.
I mean, to be fair, I kind of don't care. It's a gorgeous shot no matter how many times it gets used in whatever medium.
It is, and I love title drops across vast vistas and whatnot, you know?
It's powerful.
It is. Right, let's have a look at the map. It's, not really filled in all that much right now, but there's the mountain. That's the, big old end game point.
Yep, not that we'll be going there for a very long time.
Just making sure I haven't missed anything. I'm not going for 100%, but if I can find stuff, you know, I'll get it. It's in my collective on blood.
Yeah, I'll try and vaguely remember where things are, because I did go through and collect everything that the game had to offer. Obviously, I was using a guide to make sure I got it all there. And it does add, obviously, a nice chunk of time onto Kana, because without it, you're probably looking at a 6-7 hour game. With the sort of hunting down everything, you're looking at probably closer to a 14-hour game. So there's a nice bit of flexibility in there.
And to be honest, for the price point, it's a fantastic deal, because I got the deluxe version for like 40 quid.
It's a great deal. Yeah, I would hardly recommend it.
You'd hardly recommend it, or you'd heartily recommend it, because those are two very different things.
Oh yeah, no, hardly recommend it. It's a terrible game. Awful. 0 out of 10. Too much rot.
Too much rot. Too much indie. Well, let's get rid of this stank. Get out of here, you.
We need to clean up this village. Because obviously the village is going to be our hub for the rest of the game. And everything sort of will spoke out from that. Effectively designed like a Disney park, in a way.
I don't know if I would have described it like that. It's more of a Zelda type of game, in my opinion, but you do you, Rich.
Well, I mean, yes, but I mean more so that you've got your sort of main area that points you in the direction of the end goal.
Fair enough.
Or sort of the main target, like, so the mountain is the castle, and then all the other worlds are sort of spoked off from that.
Mm-hmm. Alright, so we've got the parry counter, we've got the shield.
So what I would recommend is that we save up to get to the rot hammer.
Yes, we're only 25 away from that, so let's make it our first portal call.
Our next portal call after that should be the additional rot action.
It's a hat shop.
So this is your other currency that you can get, the little crystals, and it allows you to buy hats.
Yeah, I could go golden rot and the digital deluxe staff, but I think I'm good for now.
Oh, you totally should. I mean, it literally does nothing other than the look.
Okay, I'll show off.
I mean, hey, I showed off as well in my run. It's just, it looks cool.
Very nice. I definitely did equip those, right? Just let me double check.
It can be a little bit difficult, but to tell initially. But it's easy to tell on obviously the staff. But with the rot, as long as that you can see them on the right hand side of the screen in the shop, you're fine.
Very cool.
Something that I should have brought up earlier that I didn't. Obviously, when we were mentioning about Ember Lab. And obviously the sort of animated stuff that they'd worked on. Part of the reason why they got, I think, the popularity and interest that they did is because they were the people who created in 2016 the viral short film based on Majora's Mask called Terrible Fate.
Oh, interesting.
That sort of led them to think, oh, creating a video game is the next natural step.
The rot seem quite fond of you. They're usually timid.
They sort of did consider when they sort of, I think, came up with the ideas for the story of Kana, whether it could become like an animated film or a series. But then when they sort of came up with the concept of the rot, they thought that it would be much more appropriate to be a video game. But honestly, I would love to see like a TV series or an animated film for Kana, because even obviously though it does fit the gameplay concept, I would just love to see more of this world and the sort of, I just like the vibe of it. And even though obviously there are criticisms of this story and the characters and stuff, I think that's more certain choices were made that make it somewhat limited, and if they sort of pulled off some of those restrictions and gave themselves a bit more freedom, they could do something quite special.
It is very much first game syndrome, where it's like, we've got everything in place, polish it, shine it, ship it, you know, and I feel like if they were given, say this was their second game, it would probably have a bit more meat to the narrative. And obviously, without going into spoilers, I think Rich and I both agree that the story is fine. It could have used a bit more oomph. But that's really my only criticism with the game. Everything else is great.
Yeah, I mean, my sort of... Obviously, we've been quite sort of... well, I suppose I've sort of come across as seeming quite mixed on it. I'm just being my typical critic self when approaching these things. But I do think it's a really good game and a really solid first game for a studio. Like, I mean, honestly, this is an incredible first game for any studio to put out. Like, the level of polish on this for a first studio of the size that Ember Lab is, insane.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
They should be so proud of themselves for that. But yeah, narrative just needs a little bit more oomph, particularly in the early stages, to give you sort of a bit more of a drive, a bit more of a reason for why this is all important.
Shiny.
Endgame, it does a relatively good job of sort of tying everything off, but just need a little bit more through fare to get you going. Need a little bit more information, I think, about Kana, a little bit more background as to why she's here in the first place. I mean, it is there as we sort of get further towards the end, but need a little bit more. And then there just needed to be a bit more fluidity in the combat, or just tweaking of the combat, and I think they would have had a phenomenal game here.
Follow it. Maybe it will
As it stands, those things do just sort of nip away at it, but hey, this is what happens during game development. You're not always going to get everything perfect, and there's always room to improve, so...
Exactly. Like, we need more 7s and 8s, and maybe even 6s in gaming to help, you know, freshen things up, so it's not just all AAA all the time.
Well, exactly, because it's just ridiculous. Like, if you look back at the early noughties and mid-noughties, like, there was a great swathe of difference in terms of the games that were available. You had those sort of BTC, C-tier games alongside the big heavy hitters, and that gave you a lot of flexibility in terms of what you chose to experience, whereas what you sort of have now is much more, you have your heavy hitters and then you have your small indie studios and very little in between.
Yeah.
And it's just a bit like, oh,
Are you guys stuck down there? Come on.
the rock can get a little bit stuck on things. I mean, it's fair, you're trying to carry a thing, you can't see where you're going, it makes sense, but still.
Ah, spirit mail. Very cool.
Yes, so this is another one of the collectibles. I believe there's... Oh god.
We don't need exact numbers, Rich, it's fine.
There's definitely 13 cursed chests, because of course. I think there might be 25 or 24 spirit mails. Basically, you post the mail, and it will open up a house in the village, which you can then go and heal, and it can be all lovely.
You don't have to heal the village, you do have, you know, your own quest to deal with to reach to the top of the mountain, but in this sort of game, it feels good to, you know, heal everything. It's kind of like Majora's Mask in that way, funnily enough.
Yeah, and it works.
Bada bing.
Feels good to help people pass on.
It does. What a weird thing to say outside of a video game.
I mean, I suppose one way of looking at this is what Kana is effectively doing here is similar to Yuna in Final Fantasy X, of helping, obviously, send those that have departed and give them a peaceful send-off. I suppose also, is it Spiritfarer?
Yes, actually,
That has a sort of similar concept. It's just I think it's a nice thing that sort of is there, because at the end of the day we all want to hope that we can have peace after death, and it's getting a bit morbid, isn't it?
Well, it's a game about grief, so this is to be expected. I guess we're done in the village for now, so let's head on into the forest. Of course you guys would be here. Use heavy attacks to break the shields.
Although I do believe that you can get a trophy if you can kill them without destroying their shield.
Ah, interesting.
I think generally the way that it's sort of recommended to do it is that you kind of like bind them with the rot and then you run around the backside and get in some quick hits. But yeah, there's quite a few actually, combat related trophies. I got all of them, I think, bar like 1 or 2, but they were particularly challenging ones. It was like kill an enemy by reflecting its projectile back at it.
Nah, I'm good, thanks.
Like, I think it's parrying it back at him. It's like no. I mean, I potentially could have done it if I'd realised that how you did it earlier in the game. But by the point that I realised how you did it, I was like, no, the only version of this enemy that I've got left is one that is a mean ass sod, so no.
Ooh, pretty. But first, we must collect the things.
Look, Kana, I know what that is.
So this is something that I noticed, and see you're having slight trouble with it as well, is that sometimes it's difficult to interact with certain elements with the rot. I don't know why, I don't know what it is that causes it to be a little bit finicky. Sometimes it just doesn't quite register that you're looking at the thing that you should be looking at, even though it's just like, it's literally right there.
Again, first game syndrome.
Yeah. Like, right here, it's just like, come on, we are looking at it. It is not that difficult. Let us lift up this bloody log.
Well, that was me pressing triangle instead of square there. I was getting too ahead of myself. So again, let not the front-loading of the criticisms in this playthrough make you think that Kana is a mediocre game. It's absolutely not. It's just like, you expect a lot from a person's first game, and sometimes you have to be realistic.
And I think it's pretty clear of anybody who has seen me and Tom do any commentary before, usually we bitch and moan the most about the games that we actually quite like.
Yeah, I guess so,
It's just because we have a lot to talk about with them, and that includes both the positives and the negatives, because we're not dim enough to not realise that there are things to criticise in the things we like.
Exactly. Alright guys, I'm going to need you to bring this over here. Not quite into the forest proper yet, which is why there hasn't been a cut, most likely.
They made another one.
To be fair, the world is... it's not fully open world, but it's pretty open, and the sort of kind of key hub areas are all pretty large, so it feels like a really nice interconnected world.
Alright, let's get rid of all this gunk before we move on.
Because this all needs to go. I mean, technically all doesn't need to go, but it looks disgusting, and we want it to go, so...
Alright, I think we've got enough for this, mate, so shall we purchase it?
Hell yeah!
Very cool.
Right there, you've got the attack that is basically going to kill maybe 70% of enemies in one hit.
Mm-hmm.
Including bosses. So... that is obviously if you're playing on the story mode difficulty. If you're playing on higher difficulties, probably not, but... it's still really bloody useful.
Oh yeah, especially since we won't be getting like a ranged attack for a little bit, so this is your mid-ranged attack for now.
And it's really, really good.
Ah. Looking a bit murky over here, guys. I think I'm going to have to come in and do some reconstructive surgery on the spirit of the land, as it were.
Yes, I think very much necessary.
There we go. Now they can't come back. That's just like a healing pod and whatnot, not really needed. He says taking an axe blade full to the face.
As you can see, combat, mixed bag. Decent, but could have done with some extra work. I think my main thing with it is that it just needed that ability to dodge or parry, I suppose dodge, parry, cancel out of attacks. Because what you'll often find is that you are in the middle of an attack or a combo, and then the enemy starts attacking, and then you're just like, yeah, because you can't get out of the way or parry fast enough to get out of the way of the attack. And obviously on the higher difficulties, these enemies hit hard.
Absolutely.
That would have helped, but hey.
Very nice. Stinky.
I suppose, whilst just to finish off my slight moan period.
Jesus, you're all negative today. It's like they're almost a new year, mate.
I know. I'm clearly just getting it all out in the open before the end of the year, like, held back so much of the anger and frustration at the world.
Oh, shush.
To just sort of blow it all out in one last blaze of glory.
Uh-huh. Yeah, just go around and mop up stuff here. Plenty of like side paths and whatnot, so you'll never really be bored making your way from point A to point B.
And also, if you find any hidden knocks, then you're likely to find a rot, or a piece of spirit mail, or a cursed chest, or a rot hat.
So much stuff for the rots. We really should franchise these guys.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.